All right, this week on The Big Show, the 95th Academy Awards take place this weekend, and we'll preview this year's Best Picture nominees as well as discuss the industry's premiere event. In addition, we'll recap the fallout from the Chris Rock comedy special, Selective Outrage, as well as the news of the impending sale of BET and its pursuit by billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires, Tyler Perry, Byron Allen. We'll examine what that means, all on episode 529 of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of The Big Show, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I hope you are joining us for a historic day today. Stick a pin in that because we're going to come back in a couple of minutes and explain what that means. I am joined, of course, by my co-host, Charles Kirkland Jr. What's going on, Chuck?
Hey, Tim, I'm glad to be here. It's a beautiful day and big day, big day, big day.
Big day. And also we are joined by a woman, I like to say, we saw the potential early here on The Big Show. We had Lanita Cook, not just as a guest on our show. Lanita Cook worked with us behind the scenes in the Black Real Awards. Lanita Cook has been a host, a valued member of the Critics' Choice Association, and she is holding it down in Barbecue Central down in Kansas City. And she's also a person who, during Black History Month, was profiled by my boy, Sean Edwards. So, Lanita Cook, welcome back to the show with all your newfound celebrity.
Oh, stop. It is always a pleasure to be here, Tim. Great to see you, Chuck. You both look great. Thank you for having me. You know, that piece that Sean wrote, it touched my heart so much for somebody like Sean Edwards to take a look at you and take a look at your career and shape it and help other people see you. It's such an incredible gift for someone. And so I'm just so grateful. So thank you for mentioning that, and shout outs to Sean.
All righty, and shout outs indeed. And as I said at the beginning of the show, this is history. We did our last in-studio show, March the 6th, 2020, 3 years ago. And guess what? Charles and I are going back to the studio for the first time in 3 years next week. So Lanita Cook has the distinction of being, I'm not gonna say the last, but like the last guest that we're gonna have in this format. Hey, Lanita, what's up?
Hey, this is so cool. Well, thank you for allowing me to be on this mile marker with you. Yes. So getting back in the studio, how you feel about that?
You know, wow, that's a good question, man. I remember the last show we did, we had no idea that it would be 3 years. Because I remember, Charles, they were like, yeah, we're gonna take a break. You know, this little thing is coming, this little pandemic. And we might be back in about 3 months. I was like, all right, bet. And Charles and I sat around literally for 3 months, and we didn't do any shows because we were trying to wrap our heads around this new reality and how we would do it. And then we started, I think in June of 2020, doing the format that we have now. And I think when we stopped, Charles, we were around the early 400s. We might have been like around 416, 417. And here we are now at 529. So we've been doing this for a minute, 3 years worth of shows, man. So yeah.
Well, I want to say I absolutely appreciate your caution, because the entire world has just exploded back into the social space. And so I'm wondering, you know, have we forgotten about the pandemic? And so I appreciate you really being cautious and slow to return and making sure everything's good and that we're in a safe space. So yeah, safe place.
Anita, trust me, Charles, I'll let Charles speak his piece in a second, but it's all by providence, because it wasn't like we was trying to go back. We got a call. It was like, oh, you know, we started letting people back in 3 weeks ago. If y'all want to come back, y'all can come. So I was like, oh, bet. So I called up Charles and I was like, hey, man, what you think? So Charles, how do you feel about 36 months we've been out? Because we left early March, we're coming back late March.
It's gonna be kind of strange because we've gotten kind of comfortable to being in my comfortable surroundings, familiar surroundings, and just being able to pull up the computer and do it like this. So it's going to be really weird sitting next to you and smelling the what is Tim Gordon as I do
I have
this
no idea
show.
what any of that means.
That
What is
Tim Gordon aroma.
Getting that the aroma, the essence of Tim Gordon.
You mean that veteran premier kind of film critic aroma? You talking
Yeah,
about
That
exactly.
PG cologne.
that
Yes.
30-year plus, cologne smell coming all off me?
Now you're starting to smell musty. Don't make it.
Lanita, this is what I put up with every week, man.
He just can't wait to be back with you. That's all. That's all I
That's
hear.
what it sounds like. So all right, we're going to pivot right now because, as I said, the sale of BET, all of this caught me off guard earlier this week when it was announced that I forget the name of the parent company. I think Paramount, somebody owns it now.
Mhm.
If I'm wrong, I could please somebody correct me. But they announced that they were putting BET on sale. Now, of course, for people who are uninitiated and don't know, BET was started in 1979, 1980 by Bob Johnson and Sheila Johnson at the time, with a grant of, I want to say it was $500,000 they got started with. And over the course of 20 years, he built this company to a multi-billion-dollar company that they sold off for $3 billion to Viacom, right? And, Viacom has had it and, packaged it with his other properties. I know Tyler Perry, who now does a lot of work with BET, is a minor shareholder in the company. And Byron Allen has also expressed interest that he wants to buy it. And I'm sure we're not going to hear anything for a minute because the sale of BET, I'm sure, or at least I think, will exceed about $5 billion. I think. And when you're talking about that kind of money, it's going to take a minute for people, even if you have the money, because nobody wants to spend their own money. So to pull together, groups of investors and other hurdles, Byron Allen has a bunch of different, independent television properties that he runs. Tyler Perry, of course, runs Tyler Perry Studios. And in addition to that, has kind of a first look deal at BET where it's a lot of shows that he's created that are now on the network. So I'm saying all that to say it's kind of complicated. It's not as easy as, hey, I got some money, let's stroke a check. There are hoops that people need to go through. So as we discuss that, I'll start with Lanita first. How do you feel, or how did you feel, I should say, when the news broke that potentially these two people are interested in buying this property that is really branded among Black America and people know what BET is? How did you feel about that? And let's start with your initial feelings and then talk a little bit about if it's Tyler Perry versus if it's Byron Allen.
Sure. So my initial feeling is excitement. When BET was up for sale to Viacom, I felt, I was younger, of course, but I felt a little bit disheartened and a little bit saddened by that. I liked the idea that this property was in the ownership of Black hands. It was started by, like you said, and thank you for mentioning Sheila Johnson as well, because I know for a long time her name was left out of the story. And so thank you for mentioning that. And so this, Byron Allen, he is a billionaire, started out in 1993 and rose to astronomical heights as a businessman and in the entertainment industry is a trusted voice and figure, and he owns the Weather Channel and CBS. And, he has, like you said, a lot of properties himself. And so he's formidable as a businessman. And I think that he would have great access to financing. And then, like you mentioned, Tyler Perry already has a relationship, a business relationship that doesn't just stream as work, but he is a minority holder in BET. And so for me, it would just, if these guys could have a meeting of the minds, I would love to see them have a meeting of the pocketbook too. So I would love for them to try to both be majority asset owners of BET. Yes.
All right. Well, we got the optimistic view from Lanita Cook, because I'll share with some of the thoughts that people shared with me, which were not that optimistic. Charles Kirkland, what are you thinking about this news, man?
Okay, first of all, I just want to say we love Sheila Johnson here because she's a good friend of us here. So we would be remiss if we did not recognize the greatness of her as well. But the first thing that came to my mind is, good God, how much money does Byron Allen have? Because he was talking about buying the Commanders, and now he wants to step up and buy BET. What is this man doing with all this money? And where did I know he's got.
Oh, I know where he got it. Don't say that. I know where he got it. And if truth be told, I think he got a little more than Tyler. So I'm just telling you.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah. So I'm like, man, I would be excited to see Byron Allen step up and be the owner of BET and return it to our hands, I would say. Because I felt some kind of way, like Manita said, about when they sold the property, about what it was going to be and who's representing it, what it was going to look like from in the future. So it's going to be interesting to see it coming back to Black hands, I think, and whether it's Tyler Perry, I'm not the biggest fan of Tyler Perry, but I do recognize that he's done a lot of great work in Atlanta for the community, and he's done a lot of good stuff. So we're trying to build this community here in Washington D.C. So it would be interesting to see if he could build it up here in D.C. like he did down in Atlanta.
Well, I talked to and that's all, and all those points that you guys, before I do my piece, all those points are valid.
I'm gonna leave the pessimistic view to Tim Gordon.
No, I'm just, I'm a guy, Lanita and Charles, that spends a lot of my week, and Charles knows this to be true. I have conversations all week with people from around the world, and I'm not saying that like I'm special. I'm just saying that that's my MO. I always, when we're developing show content and we're thinking about stuff we should talk about, I always run it through a gauntlet of people, right? And what I got back was before Byron Allen's name was added into the mix, that I said personally, I respect Tyler Perry as a businessman, right? The fact that he was able to buy 300 acres and put 12 sound stages on it, have the ability. He's one of the few, I would say literally, there's only a few, like Tim Reed and his wife had a studio in Richmond, and I can't think of too many other people, but far and away, excuse me, I was about to call. Tyler Perry has the largest studio, bar none, of anybody that's African-American. And the fact that if he's able, or if he's the one that comes out with BET, and the fact that now he'll have the largest Black studio and probably the most recognizable Black brand, is kind of exciting in a way, but it's also scary in a way, because if you look at the programming that's on BET right now, where's the Oval and Sisters and Bruh, and creating the have not. Watch this. I'm not saying anything. I'm just gonna say these shows, and you draw your own inference, right? So, like, if it was Oprah Winfrey, and with a track record of Greenleaf and Queen Sugar and some of the stuff that she's done, I think you feel like the network, at least from a content standpoint, would be in better hands. The fear I have, and this is before I even started talking to people, was that Tyler would use BET as kind of his feeding ground. It's like a one-stop shop. I'm gonna make the movies over here in Atlanta on these sound stages. I'm gonna rush them, get them up, and then I'm gonna bring them over to BET. And I'm like, I don't know if that serves us well, if that's the entertainment model, if Perry is going to do what he's done with these studios and some of the other shows at BET. So that's the scary part. I told you the exciting part is that I respect him as a businessman. He's putting a lot of Black people to work, even though word on the street is he may not be paying them premium money, but he is putting Black folks to work. Byron Allen, on the other hand, is a different animal, right? Byron Allen, I just watched his Griot Awards a couple of months ago. He's got the Weather Channel. He's got like a string of networks. So I really don't know what we would expect from a programming, or what the direction of programming would be under a Byron Allen, we do have some sort of an idea of what programming may look like under Tyler Perry. But the fact that we're talking about two Black men who could potentially have this IP own it, to me, is very, very exciting.
Yes.
Nobody,
Absolutely.
nobody else?
Absolutely.
All right, well, that's good. All right, so we will keep you abreast because, as I said, this is a process that's going to go on for a little bit. It's not like it's going to be a huge rush before we get there. So let's move on to the one that I think everybody wants to talk about. And so let me just say, I'm just coming back from Mississippi. I've got this cold. I don't have COVID. I literally, Lanita, have been on the show with COVID before. Charles, you remember that? When I could barely breathe, I was like,
No,
dedicated.
He's had COVID twice, and he did the show once, and the other time he said, "You handle it."
Yeah, Charles. Yeah, the first time was bad. I was like, Charles, you got it. I'm out with COVID.
Yeah.
But I come back from Mississippi, which is another entirely separate show of me. Let's just give you the highlights. Me getting a tour of Ole Miss at midnight last Friday. Just let that sit there. Oh, I'm sorry. Last Friday at midnight.
So it was like a ghost tour? Is that what it was?
Well, it was a ghost tour, all right. It was a tour of somebody explaining to me Black people and what they had gone through in the building of Ole Miss, and it felt like a ghost tour. So I was at Mississippi for the Oxford Film Festival, another show that we will have on the side. Charles knows where I'm going with that one. And I'm at a screening, and of course I get an alert. Selective outrage is coming on in 10 minutes. So I step out the theater and I'm watching this comedy special. Now, Lanita, Charles knows this because we do a show every week, that when we start ranking comedians, it's all subjective anyway. I love Dave Chappelle. I think Chappelle is very, very funny. I like Eddie Murphy. I think Chris Rock is really, really smart as a comedian. I don't think he is as witty and can put jokes together like Chappelle can. And I'm not gonna say it's hit or miss, but I said this on the show to you last week, Charles. Remember this? It's been a long time since Chris Rock had a classic show. Remember that conversation last week?
Yeah, exactly what you said.
I told you that, right?
Yeah, we said that.
This was not a classic show, right?
I was going to ask you, you're not saying this one is the classic show,
No. This is not a classic show.
It's a memorable show, but maybe not classic.
It's only memorable for the last 9 minutes, which is why I wanted to talk about that today. So there's been, and of course I went straight to Twitter after the show to kind of gauge the reaction. And, I feel like this is almost like a movie. I don't have to, there's no spoilers here, because if you haven't watched it by now, that's on you. It's been on everywhere for a week, right?
Yeah.
So of course there was Meghan Markle, there was stories about his kids, there was about being a single dude when you're 50 with money, dating, there was all this stuff. But we saved arguably the best for last when, after 1 year, after getting smacked out on the Oscars, Chris Rock had his say, right? And I'm not even going to play it because I don't want YouTube to lock my show up. But pretty much the highlights were, how do I say this in a nice way? When Will Smith went through his situation, which you know what I'm talking about, with his wife and August Alsina, Chris Rock did some pieces there, which I was like, whoa, ooh, that's a little personal, bro. He went there, and then he said everybody called him the B word. This person the talk called you a B. The View called you a B. These people called you a B. Tried to call you. You wouldn't take my call, but everybody else, called you this. And then after all of that, who did you hit? Me. And from there, Chris Rock went into I thought it was funny. I really did. And I thought that the fact that Chris didn't have a response, and this is really the first response he's ever had publicly since it happened, you can't be mad at Chris Rock for having a response, right? Now, you may have agreed, people in my own house are like, man, he let a year go by. He should let that go. I'm like, there is no time limit on pain. If somebody's in pain, you got to give them an opportunity to express themselves. So whether you thought what he did was appropriate or not, I thought he had the ability, he had the right to do it. And I also thought, which up to this point it has happened, that Will Smith don't say nothing. He's a comedian. He has a microphone. Every time you say something, the bit goes on longer. Let it go. Let it.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly what Tony Rock said.
Yeah, I heard about that, man. I mean, yeah. Tell people what Tony Rock said for the people who don't know, Lanita.
Yeah, so Tony Rock, obviously in support of his brother Chris, fellow comedian, he said to Will Smith, look, there's a rule. You don't roast the host. You don't roast the host because the host is the one with the microphone last. And you don't roast the comedian because you did this thing at the Oscars, but it's Chris Rock's time. It's time to get it out there, and he's the one with the last word. And so that is, I think, very important to why Chris Rock waited so long. And I also think it maybe was a business decision because everybody tuned in for it and live. This was Netflix's first live streaming event, and people tuned in massive numbers. So,
yes. So, thoughts on the special or the last 9 minutes?
I thought there was some good stuff.
Look! I love Lanita.
I thought there was some good stuff.
Are we? To the 9 minutes. Hold on a second, Charles. Are we to draw an inference from? Give it to us again.
You already said.
Is there anything else, Lanita, other than that? That's all you're gonna give us?
No, I have thoughts about it, but I'm interested to hear what Chuck has to say. He's already started.
Oh man, Charles, she did a pass and she was like, "Come back to me after Charles." Go ahead, Charles.
I was gonna say we already said that this is not the most stellar work that he's ever done. I mean, prior to the last 9 minutes, you might have guffawed a little bit. There were a couple times I was like, ha, 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 ha. But when he launched in at that last 9 minutes, it was vicious. It was, I saw some parts of Chris Rock I hadn't seen in a long time, which I appreciated, that he could go to that evilness, that evil well, and bring that back in. And I appreciated that about the performance. I'm one of the ones that said, hey, look, you take your time. I don't care if it's a year. I don't care if it's 2 years. You got pain, bring the pain. That was a good show. Bring the pain. So
it's a classic.
So I'm glad that he finally said what he had to say, and he did not keep Jada's name out of his mouth. So I mean, he just did what he had to do. So I appreciated the last 9 minutes of it. It was good. I was sad because I came into the show maybe like a minute after, 2 minutes after, and I thought maybe he had dropped something really hot at the beginning, but I just coasted until the end, and then it was all right. That's
so before I throw it back to Lanita, the first thing I thought was really interesting, and I'll go take it back to 1979. Everybody remembers rappers like Sugar Hill Gang, Master G, Wonder Mike, and Big Bang Hank. Hank, famously, who we now know, literally was a bodyguard and got an opportunity working in a pizza place to be in a rap group, and he didn't have any rhymes, so he went to Grandmaster Caz, who he was the bodyguard for, and hey Hank, Caz, can I use your rhymes? Or maybe he didn't even ask Caz, right? He just took the rhymes, right?
I don't think he asked him.
And one of the famous lines, and I always make this joke with people, is that this individual, because I was going to use some profanity, this individual was so dense that he literally didn't even change the name in the rhyme. So, I'm the CAS and the OVA and the rest is FLY. You're rapping. That's like me saying, Charles, can I borrow something? I'm the CAH and the ARLES Like, dude, you're Tim Gordon. Why are you saying your name is Charles Kirkland? But I say that by saying, or ended by saying, that one of the lines which sticks out is you remember, whatever you do in your lifetime, never let an MC steal your rhymes. You stole the man's rhyme. You literally said it in the record and you did it. So I take this back to last Saturday's special. By Chris Rock saying that he was raised and we don't fight in front of white people, what in the hell did you think you did for 9 minutes, bro? You literally aired this man out in front of a global audience and then said we don't fight in front of white people. You literally fought in front of white people for 9 minutes. 9 minutes. Now, again, you could change your line at the end to something else, but which sounded cute when you said it, but then you walk away and go,
yeah. 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 You know, I have to say, and I know you want us to focus on the last 9 minutes, but I do have to say that the priming of the entire special, the selective outrage, I thought, ooh, this is a great title. And then the first thing we talk about is Michael Jackson and R. Kelly. And I thought it was kind of a weak intro into the idea of selective outrage. And so by the time we build up to that last 9 minutes, I don't have that sensation that he's about to skewer. This entire special was, I'm thinking, is it provocative? I'm thinking, is it culturally aware? These are the things that we look to Chris Rock for. I think if you're looking for that, you're going to have to go back to Dave Chappelle, because here it was pretty flat in terms of his cultural progressiveness. This is kind of what we think about Chris Rock. And so when he finally, what was his build-up line? I don't need another rapper mad at me, you know? And by the time we got there, it was just a little bit of a rehash of all the things that we've heard all the other people saying online. We already know that we think he's really mad at his wife and her entanglement with this child, right? We already know that perspective. What we do want to know is about your pain. And I'm glad that he talked about the hurt that he felt in that moment, but then he diminished it by saying, but I'm not a victim. No, you were a victim. It would have been a more powerful choice to acknowledge that he victimized you in front of the world and then address it from there. And I think he weakened himself and his ability to, and so that for that reason, that's why people are like, oh, you waited because if he would have came with the thunder, we would have been like, yes, he finally had to say, but we were kind of like wonk wonk. And it's because he diminished himself in that moment. He did it to himself. And I think I'm on his side. I've been on his side. I love Will Smith. I think we all do. But when that happened, I felt, regardless of the joke or the joke's appropriateness, that was out of line. Will Smith crossed bounds that you just don't do. So the fighting in front of white people was nuts, right? And so I was there to hear him say, this hurt me. And so the perspective that he took, I think weakened him.
Yeah. I agree.
Well, let me just say what none of you will have the courage to say. And I'm just going to say this because the show is called Keeping It Real, which I've been doing for 13 years and I haven't been canceled yet. Right. I think, and this is just me speaking, right? This is my own disclaimer on my own show. I think what we learned on Saturday is, for all you people sleeping on Dave Chappelle is really good. Dave Chappelle, I can't prove this, and I know that these two are friends. I'm sure he went to Dave at some point in the crafting of this material to kind of help him, because the callbacks where I don't want another mad rapper, that's so Chappelle-ish. That's like a Chappelle thing, right?
Yeah.
It just shows you how high that Chappelle is way up here, and the Kevin Hart's and Chris Rock's, they're entertaining, they're good guys, they all pal around together. Chappelle is him with a capital H. He's
if I can,
but Lanita, basically what I'm saying is that in Chappelle's hands, I've never seen Chappelle fold in a situation like that, whether it's the age of spin, whether it's, I'm trying to think of this last one he just did, the closer. I mean, Chappelle is kind of built for this. You know, you hear him say, you know, when I go out there, every time the curtain raises, you know, I'm kind of like, it'll work out. And it usually does work out for Chappelle in ways that it doesn't work out for Rock. This special was weak. Tambourine was weak. I remember that was like, Chris hasn't had, and I go back to what I said last week, Lanita, the man hasn't had a dynamite classic special since Bigger Than Blacker, which happened in 98 and Bring the Pain in 96. It's been almost 25 years with Chris Rock. And I don't know if Chris Rock will ever get there again. I can tell you for what it's worth, the age of spin. Chappelle has made about 4 classics between the time we saw Chris's last classic. That's all I'm just telling you. So Lanita, go ahead, because I know you're about to disagree with me.
No, I was actually going to agree wholeheartedly with you. I think that Dave Chappelle is the standard, particularly when we're talking about risk level. And so what I think you hit on is that Chris Rock in his latest special tried to use a similar structure that Dave Chappelle has been using for Netflix, but he soft shoes the issues. When he starts talking about identity politics, he kind of touches it real soft and then backs away. Where Dave Chappelle, he comes in and he skewers that topic. He skewers that issue and he makes us go bananas about the topic. And so he is the cultural voice right now, Dave Chappelle. And so Chris Rock, and this is something that I thought, whoa, what is going on? He lifted some of his old jokes from Tambourine and put them in this stand-up. And I thought, what is that? And I also think we see a Chris Rock who is more reflective on himself rather than the culture. He's talking about doing drugs. He's talking about being a piece of crap kind of man who cheats on his wife, who, you know, all these things that we hadn't seen from him in the past. Well, if you're going to give that to us, you got to give it to us in a way that is, I would say, Dave Chappelle-ish.
Okay. And Charles, you got anything before we get out of here?
I think something can be said for the live nature of the show. I think you have to be really on top of your game to deliver a live comedy special. And let's think about it, even the ones that we've seen with Chappelle. None of those have been live. They're all been edited.
Well, no. They were live from first joke to the end. He didn't stop at any point in those shows.
Well, I mean, but even still, there's an opportunity to relax a little bit when you know that the pause button can be pressed and you can do it over again. And even as Chris was doing it, he screwed up a joke. I mean, when he was doing his Will Smith stuff, he actually messed up the joke and had to go back and try to fix it.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's some things that don't work too well when you're actually, unless you've been working at this craft, which we know Chris has not. He hasn't been touring like he should have been.
Yeah, he has.
No, he has not. I mean, he's done a couple shows here, but he has not been on a circuit where, I mean, when you see a comedian put on a special on Netflix or wherever, they've done that set several hundred times. I won't say 100, several times before it's ready to be.
I would say between 10 to 25 times. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. They've done it a lot.
And so Chris has not had that amount of time to perform this material where it would be able to be performed live like this. So I think I know he wants to do this with Netflix and make it a live special and be provocative and everything, but it really needed more work. And that's what I think about the special. It really needed more work, more brewing. It just hadn't steeped well enough to be as good as it could have been.
Right. I think that Chris Rock is the kind of comedian who could pull off a live event, but I think he was too emotionally attached to what he needed to say in those last 9 minutes to get there. Yeah. So, yeah.
I got you. And I absolutely agree. So, speaking of painful moments, Sunday is the 95th annual Academy Awards. Mm-hmm. And I do I even say this out loud? Because people will kind of use it against me. I'm not impressed at all with the Oscars on Sunday. I have no thrill. I mean, Nas made a song that he released a couple of weeks ago called 30 Summers, man. It's 31 years of me doing this, man. I've had this dance happen too many times. And I think part of, and Charles knows, Charles, I keep going back to Charles because a lot of these are, I'm repeating things you've heard me say on the show. Lenita may not have heard. Wasn't a good year for film. It was not a good year for film. And then the fact that Danielle Deadweiler doesn't get nominated. Janelle Monáe doesn't get nominated.
Viola Davis.
Viola Davis doesn't get nominated.
The Woman King.
The Woman King doesn't get nominated. I'm just like, there were some obvious things in a year that you could have put in this show that aren't in this show. I'm talking to a buddy of mine yesterday who's going to be working the red carpet and doing EPK stuff for like 7 hours before the show starts. And she's like telling me that they got the champagne carpet now, which is ridiculous at the show. It's going to rain. They're going to cover it up. We'll have this parade of folks that are coming in here. And I have to be the host on Sunday at the Arlington Cinema Draft House. And the fact that they've announced that they're going to do all of these categories live on television promises that I will be there trying to host for 4 hours. And Charles, do we still need to be there early to do a TV hit?
Absolutely. We have a TV hit supposed to be about 5:30.
So it sounds like, Lenita, I'm going to be stuck doing Oscar stuff on Sunday for 7 hours. 7 hours. And Charles, watch this. Charles knows this. I'm getting paid to do it. Y'all need to pay me some more money because there's a longer amount of time I got to work and entertain the crowd on Sunday. Me and Travis opposite. So, yeah, I'm less than plussed right now. Not pleased, plussed. I'm just not feeling this Academy Award. Okay, well,
I gotta be there an hour before you, and I'm getting paid significantly less than you are. So, I mean, If it were up to me, yes, I would probably be home for the Oscars this year because it is that kind of year where it's just not that great. And
how many years now have they had me host this thing? Because Bill Henry was alive, who's now gone. What year did has it been 10 years plus? 11 years?
I think it's more than 10 years, yeah.
Yeah, so Lenita, they dragged me out. Like if I didn't have to work this thing, I'd be home. I wouldn't even watch the Oscars. But I got to sit there dressed up and be like, hey, what about that last set of nominees? Wasn't that fantastic?
I was going to ask you, with the amount of disappointment that I think is everybody's feeling from this year's nominations, where are you going to get your enthusiasm from to do this live thing? But then I heard you say they're paying you, so
yeah,
he does
watch
pretty
this.
well.
Not enough. Charles knows exactly what I'm talking about. Not enough. So, without saying, whatever. This year's nominees. Oh, go ahead, Lenita. You about to say something?
Oh, I was going to ask, have you already done your Oscar predictions?
Okay.
Here's
the other part of why I love this show so much, because I get a chance to really say how I feel here because it's my platform. Mm-hmm. I've got to be on television locally tomorrow with the ABC affiliate. And I know they're going to ask me, Tim, what do you think? Who's going to win? And I want to invoke the Brewster's Millions answer. None of the above. None of these movies.
Yes.
So let's go through it now. Here are the nominees for Best Picture at the 95th Annual Academy Awards. I'm trying to say it in the voice that they would say it on the show.
Are we really going to do this?
Oh, yeah, because we teased this at the opening that we would talk about the best pictures. I'm not doing the whole show, just the best pictures. All Quiet on the Western Front. Avatar, The Way of the Water. The Banshees of Inisherin. Elvis. Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. The Fabelmans. Tar. Top Gun Maverick. And, Triangle of Sadness, Women Talking. Now, before I throw it to either of you, I told Charles that the very first movie I saw at Toronto this year, 10 o'clock in the morning, I ain't know anything about the movie. I said, hey, man, let's try this Triangle of Sadness thing. I'm sitting in there watching this movie. Charles, you remember the story. I was so repulsed when they got to the second act of this movie. The only thing that kept me in the Lightbox Theater in Toronto was I was sitting literally in the middle of the row at the top, and I couldn't get out. Because if I'd have been on the edge, I'd have been like 5,000 G. I was in them streets. So is that film, would it be on my ballot as one of the 10 best films of the year? That would be a no. All right. Next festival, right? I'm sitting at the Middleburg Community Center. Lanita hasn't been to these spots, so because if you were there, you'd understand the real humor in all of this. Charles has been to the community center at Middleburg, right? It's part of the film festival. So you're watching a movie in a place called the Middleburg Community Center. You're in the community center, it's flat. There's no risers on here, and you're sitting on wooden chairs. This movie is almost 3 hours long, and this was my experience watching Tar.
Yeah.
My backside hurt so bad watching this movie. I felt as bad as Kate Blanchett's character did watching it. Now, Tar, I believe she should be nominated for Best Actress. Would I have nominated for Best Film? I would not. All right, hold on a second. Any other film? Oh, here's another one. Go to a screening. Steven Spielberg's got a new movie out. This is an event. Every time Spielberg makes a movie, we want to see it. I watched The Fabelmans, and I knew everybody saw it in Toronto, and there were tears, and people told me how good it was. So I finally sat down to watch it, and I'm literally underwhelmed. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great. I do understand it's probably nominated because Steven Spielberg directed it, much in the same way that The Irishman, which I think is a much better film or stronger film, got nominated because of Scorsese and this amazing cast. Not saying that The Fabelmans should not have been nominated. It's the type of film that Oscar likes to recognize. And I'm trying to jump around and give it to you guys really quickly. Two more I have for you. Charles talked about me catching COVID. We were at a theater at the Montgomery Mall. Remember this, Charles? Charles had been there earlier to see Lyle Crocodile. Is that you remember that? Charles, you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Charles couldn't stay for the Banshees of Inisherin because he had to leave.
No. That's the wrong movie. I saw all of Banshees of Inisherin. It was,
but you didn't see it with me. Whatever night you were at that theater, you left and I stayed. I got the COVID. You got home. You got to go home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So not to say that Banshees of Inisherin. I like the movie. It's very mixed. The fact that a man. Oh, I'm sorry. Ooh, am I spoiling it? No, I'm not spoiling it because it came out 4 months ago. One of the
more than that.
Huh?
More than that, but
more than that. One of the characters had their two friends, and one of the guys says, "Hey, man, I don't like you anymore. Don't talk to me. If you talk to me, I'm just gonna cut my fingers off." Very weird choice. I don't understand why just the fingers, not my arm, my leg, or any other appendage on your body. He cuts off 4 fingers, throws them at the dude's on his porch. Unfortunately, his pet goat eats one of the fingers and dies, and that's the part that set him off to later burning down his friend's house. And Martin McDonagh, I love you. I like the movie. It's my kind of weird, but my kind of weird doesn't work for everybody else. But that's nominated. And then finally, I will just say, Everything Everywhere All at Once. I know people are raving about this movie. People love this film. I, Tim Gordon, host of this show, watched it 3 times. And the third time I watched it with my significant other. And I told Charles the story, who looked at me when the film was over and literally wanted to fight me. Was so mad that she wanted to fight me that I had taken 2 hours of her time from her that she couldn't get back. And I will tell you, I'm one of the few people in America that watched this movie multiple times, still don't get it. I still don't get it. We were at a junket, Lanita, in New York, and we had 10 people on it sitting around the table, and 5 of us were screaming, "This movie is crap." And the other 5 were like, "This movie's brilliant." There you go. So anybody have any thoughts about these Best Picture films? Or am I just being, the get off my lawn dude? I've had years with better films. These films aren't they're not that memorable. I swear to you, 3 years from now, if I come to you and say, "Hey man, name me 3 movies that were nominated for Best Picture in 2023. You probably can't do it. None of these movies are memorable. You might remember Top Gun. You might remember Elvis. Avatar, Way of the Water, Best Picture of the Year. Really?
Well, I'm gonna say, All Quiet on the Western Front. I thought that was a very powerful film. It came back with its 7 BAFTAs, and I am not a war movie type of person, so I couldn't fully give my heart to it, but I saw its strength and its power.
Excuse me, time out. Never start your discussion about a film with how many awards it won at a show. That holds no water for us. We don't care if it won 14 BAFTAs. Is it a good movie to you?
Yeah. Well, I'm saying I think that the industry is looking at this movie, and I think so the movie itself is okay for me because of its genre and not because of its execution. But I do think it's kind of the little movie that could, because it's one of those sleeper movies. We didn't hear about this, and then all of a sudden, and this is why the awards are important, it's got all these nominations and we hadn't heard of it. And so I think Netflix was really pushing Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio and all these things. And then out of the blue, here comes this sleeper cell, And so I think that's an interesting choice. Banshees of Inisherin, I love that movie. I thought In Bruges was a more powerful relationship between those 2 actors and Martin McDonagh. Gosh, I love Top Gun. Maverick, I loved it so much.
It should win in this year. That should be your Best Picture, because that's probably the one movie that I think everybody across the board loved and will remember from this year. Literally, we'll remember Top Gun.
It did all the business. It did the social stuff and by social I mean communal. When we went together and saw it in the theater, we had such good fun and had great conversations and talked about planes and all the stuff. It did its work, right? And it was fabulous. It was nostalgic. It was forward thinking. It was all the things. And so Top Gun Maverick was really great. But for me, it's Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'm one of those people that did get the movie, I think. I think it's an incredible love letter to how, even though we can stink because we are people, this is what parenthood makes us feel for you as children. I think it's one of the most powerful statements of, no matter what you do, I love you. I've seen it 6, 7 times. I watched it by myself. I told my children, we have to watch this movie together, because I'm a mama, and mama and daddy, we are people, and what we do is difficult, but I love you, right? And I watched this with my kids. They cry and they came and we held each other. It was very powerful for me and then for us as a family. So, and I think the performances were great. I think the inventiveness of the narrative is just amazing. For me, David Lynch's Dune has been my favorite movie of all time since it came out, right? Everything Everywhere All at Once has replaced it as my top film. Yes, I love this movie immensely. So it is my pick for Best Picture and all other awards. I am surprised that Avatar: The Way of Water is nominated for Best Picture. I think visual effects is its category. This one is not it. And I feel the same way. Women talking, I was like, is what's happening in this movie?
It's women talking. That's
yes.
Yeah.
It was,
and I'm glad you said that. That's why I didn't touch it, because I don't want anybody calling me up. But again,
no,
like I said,
I had to try to watch it several times. I'm not the audience for that. It was, so I'm surprised. Tar, good performance in a mediocre movie, and yeah. So,
Okay.
did we talk about Banshees? Did I say anything about Banshees of Inisherin? Yes, I did.
You
Yes,
did.
I love
And
it.
again, watch this, Lanita. I care about you and I respect you. And so I'm not going to crush you on your choice. How about that?
Oh, we could get into it now.
No,
Hold on. I can
please do
defend
not,
everything.
because I've had this
Look,
conversation too many times. We will not get into it. So
I'd hate to
Lanita
see
is
Tim
picking
Gordon
that. I'm
take a
still
beat
hoping
down.
that Top Gun pulls a miracle. Charles Kirkland, where are you at with this year's nominees?
You said something, Tim, that really shocked me, because I have noticed when I ask people about Everything Everywhere All at Once, it is a movie that parents get. And when you said that Heather didn't get it, I was surprised, because I like Lanita, I've been begging my family to see it, and I actually got a chance to sit down with the boys, and we watched this film. We loved this film. We were like, we need to show this to the girls, because it really is a mother-daughter love story, love-hate relationship that mothers and daughters have, and how it resolves itself is just so beautiful. No matter what you do, like you said, I'm gonna love you. I'm always be your parent. And I think that's just with all the other things that are going. And also, it's a comic book kind of movie, so it's like you got to be able to think kind of outside the box. So I know that Tim, you have problems with that kind of film, but I think it's the best film of the year. And because Oscar is so crazy that they want to be so different, it will not win. I can't see it winning, because everybody else has seen how great this film is. And they're always just got to be contrary, so it'll probably be Top Gun or something like that. Which Top Gun is a great movie, but I think the story and the execution that went into Everything Everywhere All at Once is so much better. So yeah, I think that's the way it's gonna
I will
end.
say that I respect you, Charles Kirkland, in your opinion. Both you and Lanita Cook sound like two peanut characters to me while you were talking. All I heard was wah, 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 wah. Okay. I mean, I don't have kids. I'm not a parent. I'm not raising kids, or I haven't raised any from, so maybe that's why, quote unquote, as you talk about my inability to get it. Okay, I can own that. I still say that in such a wacky year where we have women talking and the Fablemans and some of these movies, man, just give the Oscar to, what's the guy? How do you pronounce his last name? Joseph Kosinski or whatever his name is, for Top Gun. Give Top Gun. Top Gun literally, to me, would be the best choice among the films that are nominated this year, to me. I remember I took my lady's son to the screening of Top Gun, and we literally, I sat him down and watched the original like 2 days before we went to the movie, right? And I remember how much he was into it, so I was like, all right, so we're gonna go. And the shock of when the movie first opens, that they literally lifted the first 2 or 3 minutes from the first film. It was literally the same exact opening scene. The only thing that was different, instead of just saying Top Gun, they put Maverick at the bottom. And I was like, okay. And I like this movie. I'm surprised that it had the legs, that everybody liked it. It got nominated. I told Charles all the time, in a regular year, and there were like a bunch of really strong dramatic films, Top Gun Maverick would never have gotten nominated for Best Picture. It just wouldn't. But that shows you that that film and Elvis, that are both in the Best Picture race, come on, man. It's not a good year for film this year. We're going to recognize the best of the mediocre pack. And matter of fact, films haven't really been good the last several years, because Nomadland, when's the last time you heard anybody in a conversation go, hey man, I was watching Nomadland last night and that joint? No, you do not hear anybody having that conversation. What won Best Picture last year? The fact that you got to put that much thought into it tells me exactly what I'm talking. I don't remember either.
Well, it's hard to remember, because what everybody remembers is Chris Rock and Will Smith, and they stole that show.
So
yeah, everybody remembers that. And
I'm still
here's
trying to
the
remember
thing.
what won Best Picture last year.
I think what's happening in the nominations this year is a course correction from all of the hipness and the coolness that they tried to infuse in the ceremony last year. I think this is them going back to form. They are a traditional elitist organization, and I think these nominations, they're wanting to reflect that. That's what I think this is.
We got 2 minutes left in the show, and before we get out of here, I would be remiss if I did not congratulate Angela Bassett on winning her Oscar. 29 years ago, she was nominated for What's Love Got to Do with It, lost to Holly Hunter for The Piano. And I'm saying this as if she's already won the Oscar, because if she doesn't win the Oscar, it's going to look ridiculous on the Academy and validate Lanita's point even more. But Angela Bassett, congratulations. You've had an amazing year. I know the show hasn't happened yet. I'm not leaking any news. If Angela Bassett does not win the Oscar, there's going to be a furor on Black Twitter that they're going to burn down the Oscars. They're already mad. So Angela Bassett, who's won everything all season long, has got to win the Oscar, man. You got to win the Oscar this year. So any last thoughts? Go ahead, Charles.
Coda was the winner last year.
Oh, yeah. That great, memorable movie. I keep trying to tell you
again, there were a couple movies I think that could have been left out of the top 10. I think The Whale was better than Tar in the sad, angry movie, and I think The Woman King could have replaced Triangle of Sadness. So I'm just saying,
man, anything could have replaced Triangle of Sadness on my ballot, but that's another story. All right,
Agreed.
so we got about a little over a couple of minutes to go. Lanita, where can people read your reviews or see you? How can they follow you, Lanita?
Please, I am most active on Instagram, and that's just at Lonita Cook, LONITACOOK, no E. And but yes, follow me on socials, and so I like to share everything. I also have a website, blackbeebuzz.com. That's BLACKBEEBUZZ.com.
All right, Charles Kirkland, I already know the answer to this, man. Where can people read your content, follow you, and all of the cool stuff that you do?
Well, I'm on IMDb. I'm on FilmGordon.com. So wherever you can check those two places out and see me, and maybe soon you might see me on the DC Film Life again.
All righty. And for me, after all 3 decades or 31 summers, I pretty much just say Google Tim Gordon film critic, and it'll give you all the stuff you need. I'm not, man, you give me over here Twitter and then Instagram. I'm doing all of that, man. That's why Tim Gordon has a digital business card that drives Charles crazy.
Whatever. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show before you leave.
Absolutely. And Lanita, we're closing a chapter with you. It has been 3 years and 2 weeks since we have last been in studio. When you see Charles Kirkland and I next, we will be back at our home in DC radio. We're the last show of the day, Charles, because they have to fumigate the studio after we leave. So I'm very excited about being back in our radio home. And as we tell you guys in closing every week, please see something good at the movies. Good luck watching the Oscars this Sunday. I wish I could be home with you in some PJs. Well, I'm lying. Anyway, I'll see you guys next week. We'll see you on the other side. On behalf of Lanita Cook, Charles Kirkland, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys next week. You guys enjoy your evening. Bye.